Dr. Kiran Preet Kaur, Head Human Resources. Mr. Robin Scaria, CHRO, RappiPay FinTech. Ms. Samriti Malhotra, Group CHRO, Updater Services. Mr. Vishal Singh, Director HR PayU. Now please help me invite the session chair for this panel, Mr. Manmeet Singh, Executive Director, Enterprise Growth and Strategic Alliances, Indian Conventions.
Build a new narrative. It helps us to evolve in a new direction and a new dimension. Sometimes a startup can be something which can actually disrupt. For instance, Jio was a startup one time, and today we know how the landscape has shaped in the telecom segment just because of one innovative idea that they had. So similarly, we have this segment which is focusing on startup and specifically how HR's role plays an important part in the startup ecosystem. Some of the important questions. So the first question that I have for Robin is, what are the biggest HR challenges startups face as they scale? We know that it is important for us to scale because that's the reason why any business exists. Okay, because we can't just go ahead and do charity out there.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And good evening, greetings. Reflecting on that question, I think when I look at it from a perspective of how the dynamics changes when you move from a pre-money organization to a Series C or to what you would technically want to become a unicorn. Each of the stages of this organizations in the build to the run phase have got very distinct features. When you look at a pre-money organization, I'm just going back, classifying the organizations fundamentally from a funding perspective. So you've got pre-money, you've got Series A, you've got Series B, you've got Series C. So pre-money broadly, there are multiple features that you could define them as so, but at a very broad level for broader and simplistic understanding, this is your blueprinting phase where you've got things all sorted out, you're ready for production. Series A is when you move your blueprinting to production. And Series B and C is when you start scaling up, right? And that's a function of your linear scaling, and that's where you're fundamentally moving into more and more mature, into the run phase. So basically classifying the build, that is pre-money Series A, and Series B and Series C is basically the run phase. And so when you look at the HR dynamics across these, two very distinct phases, I would take a shot at looking at dynamics of the dynamics of building capability, right? So the first things first, when you look at your build phase, pre-money Series A, it's a known dimension that these are largely at-risk organizations because the failure rate of startups is pretty high.
Absolutely.
So one of the key things that you would need to circumvent is to attract talent into a perceived failing environment.
Right.
Okay, so that's challenge one. So what you need to do on circumventing that. Second is around managing your talent cost, because you're funded for a tenure. Your funding investors are not going to come back with more money till you don't complete a certain toll-gated activity plan, right? That fundamentally means at a pre-money stage, you should have completed the build of your prototype, which should have been ready for the market. Now, when you're looking at that dimension, you're looking at dimensions of a period of 18 to 30 months. So the kitty of money that you have as an organization is limited. You need to be working around your comp plans of paying out your money in such a way that you're not running out of cash for your talent. Why is that critical? Look at your talent cost as a function of your revenue. Typically, at a startup, you're pretty heavy on your talent cost. It would be around 60 to 70% of your revenue. And then the other dimensions that come in with regard to product licenses. And so at that stage, you need to be very intelligent, and you have to work around the challenges of your comp design, of how do you balance out fixed compensation with ESOPs, with profit sharing. So those are dynamics that you would have to circumvent. The third dimension specifically on the build stage is how do you keep your talent who are with you engaged and motivated. Because for them, the compelling point here is anything could go wrong. I've left a job from a standard large organization and come and join you at a premium for sure.
True.
But then there is no cash surety for me because I have an EMI to pay.
Absolutely.
So there are those dynamics that you would have to circumvent when you're looking at the talent stability dimension,
Very
right?
true.
So that's from a build stage. Move over to the run stage. The dynamics of the organization changes, right? You're no longer focusing on building and establishing. You are established. You have got a customer base. You have established moat. Now you're progressing on scaling, and the whole dynamics of the organization in terms of talent requirements starts changing drastically. You no longer require builders alone. Builders are required to fundamentally supervise what was built. You also require operational specialists. So you need very senior technologists, very senior operational leaders who understand protection of moat,
Yeah.
who understand risk mitigation. So the type of talent that you bring into the pyramid starts changing. And so how do you switch over? That is a function of your strategic workforce plan, right? So you need to foresee that change coming to you as an organization, and that's why you need to be very, very close with the business and with the operation. And this is also a stage where you would want to start standardizing your systems and operations, because now you are focusing not only on revenue, we are also focusing on margins.
Yeah.
And margins is a function of how much do you optimize your pyramid cost, how do you fundamentally baseline productivity, how do you track actual performance against baseline productivity. These are dynamics that start coming out to play when you're in the run phase, which is fundamentally when you're becoming a unicorn. And you start getting questions by your investors because where's the moolah? I've paid money, I need my ROI.
Yeah.
And no one is going to give you money for anything less than a 20% return.
True.
So you at a CHRO level would have to be very, very conscious around the cash out that you are incurring for the organization. And you also have to factor in that there's a perpetuality to the increment cycle that you will have to factor in when you're doing this. As an example, in an organization, at a 9% average inflation and a 60% cost to your revenue, you need to also you also have to pay the very fine balance of allowing certain talent segments to move on and certain talent segments to stay on. And that's a very, very challenging task. You need to know what you need to retain at what point in time. And in very matured ecosystem, I would believe your understanding of work design becomes very, very critical of how it existed in the build phase as opposed to how it exists in the run phase. So those are broad dynamics from an organization standpoint when you look at the transcending of a build organization from pre-money to Series C.
Wonderful. So well summed up, Robin. And I think it is important. I think the biggest golden nugget for me is people. And as Gallup, which is one of the largest survey, which does employee engagement surveys, they focus primarily on the people managers. And they mentioned that the reasons that the organizations, or rather the people leave the organization, is because of the people managers. So if they can build a culture during the startup phase itself, it'll really help in the building the ecosystem in a much larger way. So great, thank you so much for wonderful nuggets. I'm sure we would have a lot of as they say, shots, YouTube shots from the whole nuggets that you have shared with us. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Dr. Smith, quickly over to you. How can HR help startups balance innovation and compliance and operational efficiency? Now, I've been in compliance for almost about 9 years, and I've seen the landscape change over the past, at least the last 4 years, though we've not had the labor codes yet. But we've still got that around the corner. And the real question is, when would that happen? And if that happens, how would that impact the startup ecosystem?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. And after lunch, it can be a pretty heavy session wherein you've had sumptuous lunch, and I'm sure keeping your eyes open could be a challenge. We'll try to make it as interesting and as insightful as possible. So as far as compliance goes, I believe that there is no question over there. Whether a startup or whether an established business, the compliance is a mandate, is the law of the land, and has to be followed.
Yeah.
And many a times I've seen in the organizations, not even the startups, but very well established organizations, wherein they try to cut corner, but believe you me, you're just signing up for a hefty price and some penalty at the later point in time, because the government will come back to you if you're not compliant to the law of the land. Managing it with the code of wages, which is just round the corner, and it is expected it may be implemented effective financial year 2025-26. It is a win-win situation for the employee, wherein you get to have a sizable number for your longevity in the organization, for your, I would say, retirement benefit of provident fund, and for the organizations it comes across as fair only. But yes, one part is still debatable and requires some bit of clarity and I would say concrete way forward from the government when it gets applied, is the incentive bit of it, which is linked to your performance, whether that becomes a part of your compensation or that can be parked as a separate motivator for the people who are doing pretty well in the startups. Because in the startup, as Robin said, there's a strategy to stabilize the organization, initial phase building, and then you will need the aggregators to take it to the next level so that the stakeholders and the investors can have their return, and the time period is very, very short on that. People who've invested the money, they'll look for the returns. Over there, it can be amplified wherein you follow the code of wages or the compliance, but you do have the policies and the incentive plans for your best performers or top performers to go to the market and get the best out of the market. That's the way I feel it
Wonderful.
needs to be managed.
So well put. Thank you so
you.
much. Okay, so Vishal, now moving over to you. What talent strategies should startups adopt to attract high impact employees? And that's always a tough question because high impact employees come at a high price.
Absolutely. So Manvi, thanks for this opportunity first of all. If you ask me, any person who has been a part of startup ecosystem, I think 70 or 80% would like to come back to this ecosystem again. Because the thrill is very different. It's like driving a Formula One on Gurgaon roads. But if you reach home, you save
Good
time. And you build your careers there, okay? But let's jot down some of the 4 points which I think make sense. First of all, the works needs to start from the company side first, okay? Instead of putting the onus on people to apply on those companies, the onus lies on the companies first.
Right.
They have to understand what is the brand they are building for themselves, okay? Are they playing in a red ocean or in a blue ocean? And that should be linked to what products they are working on. That's one. Second is, what is the employee value proposition they are proposing for people who wants to join this organization?
Right.
And this employee value proposition, the one very important thing in these organizations are only about careers. Other policies, flexibilities, X, Y, Z, it's fine. But if you're not building careers, people will not come to you and they will not sustain, okay? Third is, in what way you are operating in terms of your processes. The processes, as ma'am said, should be highly compliant so that you do not face anything related to, say in fintech, it's called embargo. In case the compliances are not there, you can't onboard new merchants and you can't operate with the same merchants, okay, to do further businesses. Very high on compliances. And the fourth very important piece, which is the crux of everything, is the culture also.
Yeah.
I mean, if the promoters or the owners, as they operate in a very small teams, if they do not bring transparency to the ways of working, if there's a lot of red tapeism around right at the start, the culture, the talent will not stay for long, okay? So this is the way in which you can initiate the conversation going to attract talent of any kind. High talent for sure is very important, but talent of any kind, okay? When I say high talent, I will keep this case for N-1, N-2s or N-3s as of now, because these talent brings a cost to the table and the cost is majorly for these talent at that specific order. For us, it is about, first of all, understanding how do you define talent for that organization. Many a times there are many organizations who do not just understand what kind of talent they want inside this organization. So define those talents pillar for you clearly, okay? Then you go out there looking for it. Give the people who are part of your ecosystem for long a chance to move to that role. So the talent attraction should not be always external in nature, it should be internal in nature also. And that's where identification of what is the talent definition for you is very important. The second step is identification. Is there any processes existing inside the organization by which you can understand that an XYZ employee is a talent, future talent for you, who can take N-1 and -2 also not? Or is it only through some specific recommendation which is biased in nature from some specific fraternity or department or XYZ thing? So that is the second step. Identify a tool or process which brings a lot of transparency to the overall process. The ownership is for everyone, the collaboration is coming from everyone, and that's how you are identifying those talent for your future roles.
True.
And third is, once you identify the talent, give them an open field to play on. Give them a long hand actually. Give them a chance to fail also.
Absolutely.
Because innovation, startups, they go hand in hand. When you go out to innovate, there would be chances for failures
Very
also.
true.
Okay.
Back them up.
And the last 2 points would be about engagement, how you engage it. It's not always about money. Startups, majority of the time, they works around variable pays, ESOPs, RSUs, LTIs, you name it, okay?
And
but it is, many other profits also. But it is not always about that.
Yeah.
Right? Engagement would be of some different kind of higher order, where are you making these guys are a part of core team that is deciding the North Star for the organization in a long-term basis or not? Are they getting visible in fraternity that really matters for them or not? So this is about the engagement. And finally, retention. Retention again is the softer side, harder side. Harder side, I would say money. Softer side, again, the culture which you will build, taking them along. So this is the ways in which we can attract talent in startup space. Yeah.
My view is culture any day over anything else. But nevertheless, thank you so much. So very well summed up. Okay, Dr. Smriti ma'am, over to you again for the next question. How can HR preserve company culture in a high growth startup environment?
The company culture is a combination of a lot of aspects, and in startups, typically, I would say that it's a high-paced environment wherein most of the times, it is 90% of the workforce is either millennials or the startups tend to hire the younger generation, and maybe a little tenured people are there at the HOD level or at the board level. But one thing that they miss is be it universe, be it the startup, be it the organization, balance is the key to the success. It has to be a balanced, diverse approach,
right,
wherein there is enough diversity to actually be there for a level playing field, as well as for the growth and the balancing the success as well as the failures, wherein the experience meets the aspiration and I would say fire in the belly or the aggressive approach towards growth. That is one of the key factors. The second part is the basic values of the ecosystem, be it integrity, be it the transparency, be it the empowerment to voice out your opinion being heard, be it the safety of the employees remains relevant throughout for any of the organizations, very important in the startups. The third part is when the startups, they start with it, though you've shared on what you should be looking in the talent, the startups should look at the person's personal orientation or the leadership style, very important. Typically in a startup, there are two kind of leaderships which hold very, very true and which contribute a lot to the success. One is a dreamer or a visionary who has the vision, who has big dreams, and who has all the passion and the grit to go forward and achieve that dream. The second kind of leadership is the balancing part, which takes care of the compliances, policies, processes, and holds the ground so that the dreamer or the dreams don't go haywire and they remain in the structured environment. So these two kind of leaderships are inevitable to bring the success to the startups. Besides that, from the culture standpoint, as I said, that diversity is the key to it, wherein there is an equal opportunity for everybody and the mutual respect is there. So these are the elements which help in building the culture, which is fast growth environment. At the same time, the balancing factor is there. So that's the way I look at it.
Well put. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Kiranpreet, now I have a very interesting question for you, and I'm sure you would be up to it for answering the question. What role does HR play in ensuring sustainable expansion of startups? Now we all know that startups they all start with a plan and then they just fizzle down because of lack of funds or whatever. How do they sustain?
Thank you so much, Manmeet, first of all. Very good question. So honestly speaking, I started my journey with brands. And one thing that I realized is that they are very, very particular about the things that they plan, they execute it. When I moved towards the startup ecosystem, I realized that they do not stand to what they say. And I think to be able to maintain, in that ecosystem, to stand sustainable for a long time and become another unicorn, I think we need to craft adaptive strategies to handle the situation well enough. For instance, a startup might think, why do we need a senior resource at the moment? Maybe just a manager, HR manager who could hire through Naukri would do things for us. Let's do that. I think we need to create some kind of, education. I'm sure the investors do that, first of all. But I think there is a requirement wherein these startups can take suggestions from the fraternity, which is open to them. They take consultations, they understand what the requirement is and basis which they do hiring. So we need to have adaptive hiring in place to be able to have a sustainable ecosystem. B, I think culture plays a very, very important role. We need to, for startups, a lot of startups I see that they just don't care about values, wherein brands, you'll see them giving gifties, all around their value system, aligning from top to bottom, every resource that they have in that organization. They forget. They're just so much after executing the plans, executing the targets that they've set, that they forget that culturally, everybody needs to be aligned to what they look up to. Third, entrepreneurial mindset. I feel everyone in a startup atmosphere must have an entrepreneurial mindset, which means that they should feel the ownership of the things that they're doing. Not only that helps you go towards the ground level and understand things that are working for you, things that are not working for you, but also act as an opportunity for a lot of organizations to change their plan of action. And create an atmosphere where these new leaders get a learning before they start people management. Which is a big miss in a lot of startups that I feel that they forget succession planning to be anything that should exist. For any ecosystem to sustain for a really long time, correct mentoring is required, and I always emphasize on that. For example, just before this catch-up, I had a very brief catch-up with somebody who mentioned that there was a director HR working, handling things, and then unfortunately decided to put down papers. Now everything comes down to somebody who's just handling recruitment, perhaps. Now this person is doing policy making and everything. And now the organization feels that we should not go for such senior hiring. Probably let's do away with the manager role and good to go. Now that's for sure to fall flat. Right. And this happens. I mean, to our surprise, this happens around us, and which needs to be put at bay, I would say.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Very well put. Shall we like to add
just
something?
add 2 lines to
Yeah,
what
sure.
ma'am said here.
Very quickly.
To HR, to partner in the expansion of the business, they need to stop thinking like HR also.
Right.
Okay. So HR. So say for example, in the product lifecycle journey, you have the product team, you have the tech team, and you have the sales team. In my organization, if I quote examples, there are HRBPs that are driving the BRD documents of the products also.
Right.
They are equally voicing the opinion of what the sprint cycle should be looking at, because they have their ears on the ground, and they are also creating the sales incentive plan for the sales team.
Absolutely.
By understanding what are that key milestones of the pillar that impacts the salesperson who's right there talking to a B2B customer or B2C customer. So if you keep thinking like HR, if you keep thinking like a finance, if you keep thinking, I mean, the expansion of the business will be standstill.
Absolutely.
So in startups,
Yeah.
have to remove that hat also.
Brilliant, brilliant, wonderful. Abhay sir, so last but not the least, this is a very, very critical and pertinent question, and I'm sure you would have all the answers with all the wisdom that you have, and we are looking forward to that. How can startups leverage HR analytics and data-driven workforce planning? Now, we all know data is fuel these days. Without that, nothing is really possible. So if you have that in place, like for instance, Meta, they all are probably listening to us while we are talking over the phone or searching something on the net. So that's all fuel for them. So coming back to the question, how can startups leverage HR analytics and data-driven workforce planning?
Yeah, so thanks for giving me this opportunity to be part of this panel of very talented people. Today, when we look at the startups, what we see, everybody who is into the starting a new business or a startup or introducing a new thought or a business proposal or a kind of a product or service, the major focus is primarily we see market, product, and how that is growth. So in that ecosystem, what we really see that in terms of workforce planning, in terms of decision making, in terms of using data for the decision making, that is, I have seen not is a priority in the initial days of a startup. And that is how usually we see after a couple of years when the startup has reached to a level and is scaled up to a level, then they start facing issues in terms of that now how do I scale up, how do I run, how do I make process, how do I make system, why I have excess manpower, why I am not having the right kind of manpower. So I think that is again, we discuss about culture in the startup. So I think it is very integral part of the culture which you develop in a startup.
Absolutely.
From the very beginning of the decision making process, that how are you enabling your data in taking the decision making, how are you hiring the right kind of people who are using data in decision making and who are taking the decision based on the data. And usually this kind of data will help you in the long run to build a very solid foundation of the startup and to scale up at a much faster pace in the days to come.
Right.
And if we today talk about the kind of data analytics we are using in HR, I think again the startup comes with a mindset that no, this is something which big companies are using. This is
Correct.
something which we will see when we grow up, when we have.
Right.
But it doesn't require that kind of a mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
can use it from the day one.
Right.
You create that kind of a culture where your decisions are based on the data and you are using all kind of analytics for even HR. Maybe you
Right.
are having only 10 people or 50 people, doesn't matter. But how are you engaging with them in terms of their engagement, in terms of their KPI is one of the biggest.
Right.
How are you evaluating their parameters? How are you fixing their responsibilities and targets? How are you planning their incentive plans? How your incentive plans are linked to the business growth? I think there are multiple data points which can be used from the day one in a startup to build the right kind of culture and make your organization to remain competitive in the days to come.
Wonderful, wonderful. So very well put. So I think, to sum it up, I think it's important for us to firstly look at the right perspectives, have the vision in mind, as Vishal also said, have some really important key factors. People is one of the main driving force. Keep in mind that you need to have a good ecosystem where people thrive and they just do not join just for the sake of it, but keep the culture going as well, balance the two out. Also, it's important to maintain compliance, as ma'am said, because if you do not have that in place, it will really make things wavered. Finally, and the most important thing, and this is something which I always mention as a quote for time management, and we are just 4 minutes away, that beat the deadlines to be in the headlines as per the guidelines, else you'll be in the sidelines. So I repeat that, it's beat the deadlines to be in the headlines as per the guidelines, else you'll be in the sidelines. And why beat? Because if you're beating the deadlines, you're ahead of the game. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, all the esteemed panelists. You've been a wonderful panel. Any questions from the audience? We still have about 3.5 minutes. We can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Very quick questions. Anyone interested in asking any question? Sir, ma'am, anyone? Okay, I'll take silence as no. Nevertheless, let's pass on and end the discussion over here. Thank you so very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I think it's been very fruitful. At least for me, it's been great takeaways. I'm sure once we have the shots ready and the nuggets ready, as they say, we will all share it with everyone, and that will really help the younger generation as well, especially those who are starting up. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I would just like to add one more thought. And sorry for that,
No,
but
no
I
problem.
thought that's pretty important. Many a times we undermine failure. So when you hire people for startups, just ensure to learn their failure stories as well. That's equally
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely.
And how the perseverance has played a role, because once get success, they say many times, is overrated. It's the failure which are the best teachers, and we learn the
Very true,
most.
very true.
And with that will actually help you choose the right talent, because in a startup, you will have the teething challenges. The people will face failures also at times. Till the time the perseverance is there, till the time that orientation to thrive in that culture is there, people will come back, the failures, overcome the failures also, and the perseverance will be there. And I'm sure they'll come with their plan B as fast as possible. So that will help the organization to succeed. Thanks.
Very well said, ma'am. And in fact, I would like to add a little bit more to it. Pay it forward with the failure, which is, in case you've had the failure, pay it forward with the lesson of the failure. That's what I meant. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Manmeet Singh, and all our esteemed panel members for such valuable insights. And we would like to appreciate their valuable contributions through a felicitation ceremony, for which I would like to invite on stage Dr. S.Y. Siddiqui, former Executive Advisor, Maruti Suzuki India. Let's give a big hand, everybody. I request Mr. Abhay Kapoor, Group CHRO, Uniparts India, to please come forward.
Let's clap again. Huge round of applause. Can we please have a standing ovation?
Come on, everybody, let's have a standing ovation for Mr. Abhay Kapoor. I request Dr. Kiran Preet Kaur. Let's have a huge round of applause, everybody.
Let's stand once again, please.
Mr. Robin Scaria, CHRO, RappiPay FinTech. Ms. Sampriti Malhotra, Group CHRO, Updater Services. Mr. Vishal Singh, Director, HR, PayU. And the session chair, Mr. Manmeet Singh, Executive Director, Enterprise, Growth and Strategic Alliances, Indian Conventions. I request you all to please come forward for the group photograph. Thank you so much.